international schools, one of the most persistent challenges is finding the right balance between consistency and individuality. Global frameworks and national curricula set high standards and clear expectations, yet schools also strive to nurture student agency, creativity, and more personalised learning pathways for their students. As education continues to evolve, educators and leaders are now asking, how can we uphold curriculum integrity and comparability while giving teachers and students the flexibility to adapt learning to context, culture, and individual needs? In today's roundtable, held in partnership with TeachAid, we'll explore how schools around the world are navigating this balance, from curriculum design and assessment strategies to the role of digital tools in bridging structure and flexibility. Together, we'll unpack what personalisation within a framework really looks like in practice and how technology can empower both teachers and learners to thrive within it. So yeah, really delighted to be joined by our exceptional panel for this conversation. And to kick things off, if you could each briefly introduce yourselves, your current position, and the region that you're based in, that would be fantastic. Neil, would you mind kicking us off?
Yeah, hi, welcome everybody. Neil White. I'm the Deputy Principal Whole School for St. Joseph's Institution International School in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, which is also the head of the elementary school as well. Obviously, we're based in Southeast Asia.
Fantastic. Simon, do you want?
I am Simon Foley. I'm the secondary school principal at the International School of Lausanne in Switzerland.
Brilliant. And David?
Hi, I'm David. I am the Director of Learning at the Alice Smith School in Kuala Lumpur.
And Nadeem?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nadeem. I'm the founder of TeachAid, which is an AI tool for curriculum and pedagogy.
Going straight into the first question, how do you each personally define that right balance between adhering to obviously international standards that your schools are offering and a more sort of personalized learning pathway for your students? I'd love to get your sort of top line thoughts on that one. Simon, how are you approaching this?
Interesting. Okay. I think the purpose of a school is a very broad remit, and I'm very conscious of two kind of trends that are happening in international education. One is more and more children are going for the ultimate personalized pathway, which is to be educated at home. And a number of children attending full online schools is also increasing as well. So I'm very cautious of those things. And I think when parents have more choices now of where to send their children in terms of educational pathways, I think they look at schools in physical places as a very broad set of objectives which fall outside of an educational and academic pathway. So I'm very cautious of that. I think at their heart, schools have a remit of socialization and collectivism for children in terms of pathways. So I feel at the center of it, schools love the idea that all of the children will come through their school and they will bend and flex to the system that the school has in place, and it will design it at its first principle as to meet every child's needs. And that is, of course, a wonderful utopian ideal that is non-existent in reality. We have children of all different experiences and all different challenges and strengths. And so the dual reality of that is that schools have to find the pathways that allow the children to get what they can exceed from and excel from within an educational framework. So I think you have this idea that you have a starting place that in an ideal world, everybody would do a similar thing, but the reality is, of course, that children have got diverse needs and schools have to be able to provide for those diverse needs. And the real challenges and the real opportunities come in, where do you create individual pathways? Because you have lots of different levers that you can pull. You have lots of different opportunities. Some of those are more easy to pull than others. And I also feel that one of the reasons that parents choose to send their children to schools which are what I would describe as prestigious or selective in some cases, at least socioeconomically, is that they really want to benefit from the standardization that outcomes provide, particularly about portability and validity and the next steps of their own children's education. But they would also like to benefit from the personalization that their children would need to be able to reach those standardized outcomes. So it's a really interesting paradigm. I think every single school has this challenge and opportunity, and we live it every day.
David, your thoughts on that one in terms of your personal approach to this?
Well, I'm understanding those standard international standard benchmarks of your core curriculum standards, right? And when I first started working in curriculum and curriculum development, I was tasked by an international school to help design a kind of a personalized curriculum and standards curriculum for an international school. And so what I did was mix the Australian national standards with the British national standards with American Common Core. And it was a massive task. And when you actually really got down to it, a lot of those national standards are based off of brain development or based off of what students can attain as a curriculum skill at a certain stage of life, right? And when I think of how we are teaching these, I think it has to get down to the purpose of why we are developing those national or those standards. And for Alice Smith, it's the British national standards. And what we say is that the purpose of developing those standards is your personalization. Like we want students to be able to be good readers and writers, but yet the purpose is within whatever personalized plan that they want to show those standards. So I mean, as a school, we need to develop those common skills, common core curriculum skills, but the personalization and the adaptation and what schools can do in assessing them and allowing students some personalization and showing and understanding them comes in the student's purpose and and the way that they can share those curriculum standards. So I think there is this balance. As a school, we need to pay attention. We need to make sure that we are developing those standards, but yet the personalization really comes into the way that they show and display and want to share their understanding of those standards.
Nadeem, how are you approaching it?
Yeah, so what we're doing at TeachAid is kind of I look at it as almost a waterfall approach. So what we start off with is the region or the state standards that we're working with. So whether that be IB or Common Core. And what we do is align TeachAid to that for every region that we work with. But when we actually partner with a school or district, what we do is hyper-localize it to their needs. So first we start at the region, and then we hyper-localize it to the district or school. And then from there, we can localize it to the classroom and the student. So again, at the region level, it really comes down to the curriculum standards. But then when we work with a school, we understand everything from culture, history, geography, to school values, pedagogical frameworks. Do you want to lean into PBL or is it UDL? What do all those things look like at the leadership level of the school or district? And then from there, when the teacher goes into use TeachAid and build full curricular units, they're able to take the frameworks and guidance set down by leadership, but they're able to personalize it for the classroom. So where is that classroom at today? What are the students' interests? Where are they at a learning level? And even multilingual, so being able to build out everything in a UDL type way in different languages, different interests, different inquiries. And then even further than that, once you actually get into the activities and building out the actual lessons, you're able to personalize it for each student's learning path. But yeah, I think it is this waterfall approach where if there's a curriculum reform or a new curriculum comes out, or you just need to align to that region's standards, we start there and then we kind of work backwards to the student.
Neil, how are you approaching this?
Over at St. Joseph's, and we've got our parent community has been established 10 years, very traditional Malay, Chinese, Korean, predominantly as well, international school, but it's very much an academic focus. So it's trying to shift that. For us, it's having that clear educational philosophy, kind of like what David said in terms of like having a purpose of what we're doing and being able to articulate it. When I was in Abu Dhabi with GEMS, just for the second role that I had with GEMS when we were setting up the GEMS World Academy, they wanted to go and have a British curriculum, but they wanted to underpin it with IB. And obviously several schools tried to do that because they wanted to have something different and put themselves in the market. So I was there from an IB perspective. I had UK experience, but it was looking at, and then they brought in something called high performance learning, which you may have heard of with Deborah Eyre. IB already has that with the learner profile and the attributes and the ATLs and the service and action. So it was very difficult to try and merge the two. So what we're trying to do at the moment here at St. Joseph's is try to shift a little bit away from the core subjects, the academic focus, maintain that academic rigor of that framework, but also provide those alternative pathways, those vocational routes, and try to give those students that are not as academically focused those options, those different ways, those personal pathways, whether it be targeted support. But I think the key thing is you have to know your teachers, you have to know who you are, who you're leading, and you have to know the students in front of you to give them those opportunities to have those pathways to be able to learn. Because as we all know, the students and everybody learns in lots of different ways. And I think it's a balance between trying to empower every student to get their potential. It's maintaining that academic rigor and the benchmarks that you've got, but also being able to put on purposeful pathways, not just USPs because you want to try and get people into the school and put bums on seats. They've got to be purposeful. Otherwise, I'm primary, so when the time they get into secondary, it will fall away. It'll fizzle out because the continuum's not there. So I think it comes back to the purpose and having a clear philosophy and approach.
And when it comes to, looking at sort of digging into the practical strategies that you're each implementing in your different contexts, how do we ensure this choice maybe doesn't lead to potential skill gaps or knowledge gaps, and that there is continuity there? What does genuine student agency essentially look like in your individual context? I mean, Neil, it'd be great if you could carry on your train of thought there and give your thoughts on that.
I think you have to go a little bit. Like, I think you've got to structure the curriculum. I think it's got to be intentional, hasn't it? When you're creating that curriculum or changing something, you've identified something that needs you to change. And that's what we're going through at the moment. We're trying to change and provide that alternative pathways for students as well. I think you've got to, obviously, it's the usual things that you've got, and like inquiry-based projects, differentiated tasks, adapted teaching, making sure students can set goals, they can reflect on their learning, but you still want to anchor those clear standards and outcomes, because at the end of the day, that's what the students are going to get assessed against. That's what the parents want to see, and to making sure that they're progressing that way. So maintaining those like strong learning objectives, making sure we've got clear, successful criteria, and allowing students that a range of different opportunities to demonstrate their understanding, rather than just narrow it into a certain type of approach in terms of how we can assess their learning. So I think it's trying to making sure that you can relate it to real world experience as well. That's how I find, especially from an IB perspective, it's connecting and using those different lenses, those transdisciplinary approaches, just to make sure that learning's a bit more meaningful, a bit more understood, and giving students that opportunity to connect rather than it just be rote form. So that's what we're trying to move towards. I don't think it's anything fantastic and inspirational. Everybody's done it and has been doing it for a long time, but we're just trying to make those connections a little bit more authentic.
Thanks, Neil. Simon, are there any particular approaches or structures that you found particularly useful in enhancing student agency in this way?
Well, I think I'm really trying to break down this idea of systematic personalisation, where as an institution you set out a set of parameters which you will say this provides our children with agency. Like, and I define agency. Agency is one of those complex words in schools, which I'm quite sure different educators have different takes on what it means. Like, I always try to think of it as three things. Like, I try to think of it as choice for children. Like, they have choice over what they're doing. They have voice in what they're doing, and the ability to be able to feed in and to voice their choices. And also, finally, taking responsibility for their learning. So I really think about it at an institutional level, trying to provide those three opportunities. And then you also have what I would describe as non-systematic personalisation. And I think we generally come at this in schools from a deficit place, where we see children facing challenges within the systematic things we have in a school, and we try to then adapt to meet those individual needs. And I suspect, and I have to say, we're not doing this as a school very well, that we have to have more systematic personalisation and less, which would create the need to have less individual personalisation. And I think we as a school tend to focus definitely that we are very, very good at adapting what we do in terms of getting children to the same place, because I do definitely feel that actually that personalisation should all try and bring children to a similar set of outcomes. And I think the personalisation is in the process and the journey rather than the outcome, but sometimes it's a different outcome. But like if I ask myself, like I really try to think through like what do we do for choice for children? What choices do we offer children along the way? How do we offer their voice and their parents' voice in terms of saying that what this system the school has is either working great for us or not working great? And how do you get children to take more responsibility, which in schools is a problem as old as time?
Nadeem, I'd love to get your thoughts on that question.
That's exactly what we're trying to do. So I guess before AI, we had this world where a school might purchase a curriculum and you'd have different tiers to that curriculum, tier one, tier two, and three. And what they try to do is make it adaptable for certain student pathways. Um, and then with the new wave of AI, there's also the ability to, I guess, do that unsystematic type of differentiation where you're able to build a piecemeal worksheet or a resource based on a certain student interest or learning level. But at TeachAid, what we're trying to do is holistically put everything together. So when a unit or curriculum is created, lesson one ties into lesson two, ties into lesson three, ties into the diagnostic form of the even final assessments. So after lesson one, what we can do is collect a bunch of student feedback and teacher feedback and understand where that classroom needs to go for lesson two, but where every individual student's weak, strong, what they're interested in, what the inquiry they were going down is. And we can actually create these truly adaptable learning paths that's still tied to the curriculum standards and again the pedagogical frameworks that the school's outlining, but the teacher can actually systematically do this at the classroom level, lesson to lesson, and throughout the school year.
David, your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, so I'm trying to synthesize and kind of connect to everything that everybody else is saying, and I guess with Simon and Neil, I'm kind of riffing off of that idea of and identifying exactly what that student agency and how agentic we want to make our students. And I think the way that I've and I think this is more of a personal philosophy, but the way that I've defined student agency in the IB terms of voice, choice, and ownership, right? But also it's a way of assessing students' use of all of those curriculum standards, right? If we're allowing this platform for students, the agency platform for students to have that voice and choice and ownership in their school day, then that means that they're able to use all of these other skills that are developed within the curriculum to use that voice and be able to, persuade other people that and their teachers about what they really want to do. And then I think that there's this next level that I think there's so much that's happening with AI, and I think most of our teachers will do something to the fashion that Nadeem is saying, is that they'll put in the curriculum standards and into an AI version, and they'll say, I have this group of students that I'm really trying to meet their needs, and then I have, this is my context, and this is where I am in the world, and this is some more recent happenings. And then the teachers are still making sure that they're paying attention to those base curriculum standards and that's core curriculum standards. But then they're using AI tools to be able to develop and make something more relevant. The agency aspect of it is that how much that's happening, all of those processes are happening by the teacher, but how much of that is actually happening by the students, and how agentic, where are the students playing this role? AI is completely supporting teachers in making these really relevant units. But as students get older, really a lot of that development should be handed over to the students, and if teachers are so easily able to put in and develop these amazing units using these AI tools, the agency aspect of that really comes into now. Students should be self-aware of what curriculum aspects that they need to develop, then go in and use the same processes that teachers are doing to develop their own personalized pathways. I see there's a massive shift in the future of education in that way. More personalized, more supported, and teachers becoming coaches more than presenters, I think. But yeah, I just kind of trying to riff off of what everybody else is saying there.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I mean, that does lead me nicely to the question of, how do we support teachers in that monumental shift that's happening right now? And as leaders in education, how are there particular strategies that you're finding effective in terms of helping guide your teachers through this massively shifting landscape? And what does that look like in your schools currently? Neil, I'd love to get your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think our responsibility is obviously we've got to support them, but I think you've got to have that clarity, that communication in terms of what you're doing, and they've got to be able to trust you. That if you're trying to make that change or you're making those adjustments, whether it's to curriculum, to staffing, to your CPD, whatever that might be, that it's they've got to be able to trust what you do, and the support's got to be there. I think we've got to be able to like articulate a really shared vision. I think where the standards are still the foundation of what we do, but that personalization, it brings that learning to life, and I think that's important. And it's being able to make sure that we can use the data properly, make sure we can facilitate student agency without losing sight of the importance of the curriculum goals. But I think the most important thing is when you're doing this and you're looking at strategies to support those personalized learning, you've got to create that culture within the school with the teachers, I think, so that they feel that they're encouraged to experiment, to reflect, to collaborate, knowing that they're being supported and they're not being judged. I mean, it's a lot easier in primary than it is if you've got like an exam cohort class that you're running through. But I think you've got to really create that culture from the get-go, from when you're starting, and have a clear 2, 3 year plan about how you're going to do that, and then then you get the buy-in from the teachers, and then that trust and as I mentioned before, that clarity will then come through, so that they feel that they're in an environment in a school where they're encouraged to experiment, to risk take, because that's what you want the children to. You want them to try things in the classroom, be risk takers, and if it doesn't work, as good practitioners, then you would say, let's reflect on what went well, what didn't go well, and review it, and then go again. And I think it's just creating that culture. I think that's the key thing.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, Simon, how are you approaching that element with your teachers and supporting them?
Yeah, I think we have to always remember in school that for teachers, the biggest currency we have is time. Right? And I think everybody is time poor in a school. And being also cognizant of that whenever we design anything that's school-wide implemented is really central. Like I would describe me personally, and probably a large section of the secondary school, as really excited and enthusiastic and positive about artificial intelligence in the school, and simultaneously super defensive. And I think as a school, we have a real clear policy. We have an own in-house curriculum developed for students, which we've delivered. It's been successfully received. We've gone through all of those processes of looking at the deficit model of artificial intelligence in education in terms of the concerns about outsourcing thinking and circumventing learning, and also really thinking about like how we get through ideas of who's actually created the work and why. And we're in that stage now where we're really trying to think about what is the purpose of each individual pedagogical design task that we have in the classroom, so that we can ask the question of like, where does AI fit into this? And I think the biggest thing that we can do in terms of supporting staff is helping them understand that this has the potential to make their jobs both richer and more efficient. And so really looking at, and I can see Nadeem nodding his head there, but really looking at like, where is the lowest hanging fruit in terms of what AI can help individuals have more time to do the part which is going to be even more in demand, which is the individualized support and curriculum design and implementation and delivery for children. Like I do not think myself personally at the moment that AI should be designing curriculum outcomes, but I do think it should be helping us understand how we go about doing things more efficiently to free up teachers to spend more quality time with children. And if I just one last thing I think on that is that what I've seen is the staff of the school go on a journey where it used to be kind of like 50% of the staff were really concerned about AI and really saw it as a deficit point of view, and 50% of the staff are kind of open-minded, to that really shift now to like a smaller and smaller group of staff worried about AI as a tool itself, in terms of thinking like, actually, I'm going to embrace this tool, but everybody worried about the potential that it has to change the way that children think, and really fundamentally asking themselves the question, how do we design and implement a curriculum in an age where the opportunity to outsource our thinking is incredibly high, right? So just to bring that all around into a full circle, I really think the key thing for us for personalisation is AI can do three really, really fantastic things in schools, right? It can provide individual support for children that we can't provide in a classroom-based environment, right? So it can act as a support. If the child knows how to use it and has agency, they can really allow themselves to be able to almost have a very intelligent person sitting right next to them, solving the questions that they're asking. Whether they're asking the right questions is the next challenge. It really can close gaps in terms of access to curriculum, like the ability to be able to have like a lesson which you universally design. And I find universally designed learning is a concept again, which I find sometimes quite opaque. But this idea that lessons are designed in a way that all children can access the curriculum, I think it has a lot of opportunity there in AI. And I really think the idea to personalize what you give to each child in the class with AI can be almost instantaneous. Change the reader level for this source, create a different way to be able to show understanding, those things which can be done instantaneously with good artificial intelligence. And lastly, I think it has a massive impact on efficiency. Like I am still teaching, I teach economics. Like economics and artificial intelligence are like a marriage made in heaven. Like it really helps to be able to teach with that. It's revolutionized the way that I both provide access to what I teach and also how I can do it more efficiently.
Nadine, what are your thoughts now in terms of supporting teachers?
Yeah, so I guess there is a subset of district and school leaders that we speak to that there seems to be a fear with automation of the teacher's job and automating the curriculum and building out actual lessons and activities. But what we see within TeachAid is teachers actually spend a huge amount of time still within TeachAid. It's just the job is changing that they're doing. So what we see is they're going through the tutor chat logs when the students are working with the tutor, they're going through responses, and they're able to customize activities and next steps and really hyper personalize them for every student and every single lesson. So we're seeing the ability to actually do adaptable and differentiated learning for every student. I think it was more of a buzzword before because there just wasn't enough time to actually do it. And it was kind of a pipe dream to be able to actually build that out. But now you're seeing that happen. So with the efficiencies, I don't think we see, and it might be the wrong way to look at it, but I don't think we see a reduction of teacher work at all. I think we see an overall rising of outcomes. And you typically see that in any technology inflection point. The cost of things and the time of building certain things might go down, but it opens up new markets and industries to go above and beyond and build things that you couldn't before and service people in ways that you couldn't before.
Yeah, David, how are you supporting your teachers in this area?
Yeah. So first of all, I think the AI and the support for AI, I feel is bookending a teacher's experience or this cycle for teachers' experience. What we really want to do is we want to provide data to teachers and lay data at the fingertips of teachers. And I've been going around the school and as I'm becoming more familiar with the school, one of my jobs is to have conversations with teachers and know, hey, what's your biggest pain point? How can we support you and helping to deliver your curriculum most efficiently? And when we come into kind of the start of that cycle, for teachers to best understand their students, that we have a group of 25 students that are in front of me. How do I efficiently understand them? And all schools, I think we're getting into this culture of being very data rich at our schools, and it's everything down from attendance data down to social emotional data that our school gathers of just a plethora of really good social emotional kind of soft data in addition to attainment data that's happening within the curriculum. And how can we efficiently put that data at the fingertips of teachers is the use of AI, right? That we're experimenting with programs that will kind of take our data lake and make it, think of data lake mixing with a chat bot, and the teacher is able to say, I'm really having a hard time reaching these X, Y, and Z students. Then once they have identified those students using AI filters and AI bots and all of its internal data analysis program. Then they're able to really focus on developing through other AI features, developing very responsive courses, curriculum, learning experiences for the students, right? Then they can completely focus on the personalized bit. They can build those relationships. They can have one-to-one conversations. They can have very detailed, efficient one-to-one conversations. They can allow students kind of more of that authentic ways of sharing their learning, and allow students to be able to be more agentic. But it all starts with a very deep understanding of their students, and it's no longer that gut understanding. I have this data lake that has been analyzed for me and put at the fingertips so that I can better respond to my students' needs. And that is the agility that we have to build into our program. We have to build in LMS platforms to be able to be agile. We need to build in data responsive platforms. We need to build in timetables and the PPA time for students to be, or for teachers to be agile and responsive to their students, right? And then I'll just echo something that Neil said, is that you have to have that trust. You have to have that relationship with your teachers and just say, hey, we trust you. And I'm going to show you through our coaching programs that I do trust you. And I'm going to show you that that we are a learning culture, that we have this learning culture at the school. And we almost expect you to be experimenting. We expect you to be I hate to say failing, but failing well, so that you know what is how to be more responsive, and that you can learn from those situations. I just, what Neil was saying too, is that we expect that same thing from our students, and we as leaders should be expecting that from our teachers as well, and that teachers expect that from us too. That we are modeling those same processes with them. We're allowing them that aspect of teacher agency, and all of that is kind of this string throughout the whole program.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I mean, that leads me nicely onto my next question around sort of, assessment, and then using the data that we do collect to track the effectiveness of these different approaches, tools, methodologies that we're using to personalize learning. I mean, David, I'd love for you to carry on that line of thought around the data that you're collecting. And are there any particular sort of assessment that you're finding that best capture personalization in practice? Or yeah, I'd love to hear your reflections in terms of the data collection piece.
Yeah, we're going through this process of understanding what data that we value, right? As I was saying before, that we are a very, very data-rich school. I think many schools are extremely data-rich, but I think we kind of need to narrow that down into what learning data do we value? And traditionally at schools, it is those core curriculum areas. So are they attaining in English, maths, and science, and so forth? But then we're going into the world of AI. We're going into a kind of a future focused curriculum where we need to start gathering other data. IB schools are hopefully gathering data on approaches to learning and learning skills. We're looking at the Melbourne metrics and competencies-based education, gathering data for those competencies. We're looking at the skill of being able to develop a conceptual understanding and being able to transfer those to new and unfamiliar situations. So all of those are non-traditional data points that we do want to have conversations with teachers around, like, how are you developing? How are you developing them? How are you allowing students to show and showcase those? And I think it's all in the purpose of designing a story. So what we would expect for teachers is, show me your data, let's talk about data, let's have this conversation about data, in the purpose of having a story. Let's have a story around numbers. Let's have a story about what we as a school is valuing and collecting, and then you as a teacher is developing and able to show and able to evidence. Heidi Hayes Jacobs does a lot of work on storyboarding and developing curriculum through stories. And I think that's kind of the take that we're taking is we do want to have those data-rich conversations, but it is all about the holistic story of the students.
Neil, I'd love to hear your thoughts now in terms of measuring the success of.
Yeah, I think when you use the word measure, I think when you come up with something, I mean, like whether you're using that in like an appraisal or goals or whatever setting, it's got to be measurable. So I think when you're using measure, but you've got to have some accountability in there as well. So I think there's a balance between like that student's individual growth because you're looking for these personalized pathways, but you also want to make sure you've got that collective accountability as well. So I think I agree with David. I mean, we've got, as every school has now, you've got so much data on everything from the minute they walk in, from your Cat 4 assessments, your entrance exams, your pass, your well-being, your PT scores. You've got such a range of data, and it's SEN, all that sort. And it's now trying to use that data. But I think the important part is to use the clear frameworks that you've got to track that progress. I think that's the important part. I think you have to come back to the purpose in the school of whether you're about attainment or whether you're about progress, and it probably depends on the way the demographics or your makeup of your school or your vision or your philosophy, the way it's going. But it's like in terms of is it attainment, is it progress? We very much focus a lot on the progress of the child. As the attainment does matter and it's important, but we want to make sure that we see progress on each and individual child, whether they come in at immersion level, at EAL or whatever that is, so that they've got their own unique learning journey and it works that way. So I think it's important that you celebrate those personal progress. You've got to identify the gaps very, very early, look for the interventions, but really maintain that accountability at like a school-wide level. So that way you can ensure that like every student is seen, you're identifying them, they're not just a number, you're measuring them, and then you're supporting them individually. And I think that's a key aspect of it. So going back to the data piece, I think it's a matter of just being able to clearly determine which data you want to use, because otherwise you've just got it there and you can have it, but it's actually not doing anything. It's not purposeful at all. You've just got a whole range of data, but you're not doing anything with it. So I think you've got to be more intentional with what you're doing with that.
Nadeem, I'd love to get your thoughts now in terms of assessment piece.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that waterfall approach that we kind of set up. So doing those initial workshops with the school and understanding what data do they value, and then setting up that localized system based on their values and what data matters to them. But at the same time as that, with AI, we do have these data lakes or a huge amount of different data points coming in. And what we can do is also surface different things and insights to leaders that they might not have thought of, any anomalies or anything like that, or different ways of thinking of things. But I do think it does go back to that approach, understanding what the school values, the data they want to collect and surface, and then setting that up and then kind of going from there.
Yeah, Simon, your approach to measuring the success of
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take a slightly different approach, I think. I think the question was really about what's the role of assessment in personalized learning? And I can echo what my colleagues have said here, and I've never heard the phrase a data lake before, but we're definitely in a data lake as well. We're like schools is incredibly data-rich places, but we're very analyst poor on that data.
Mm-hmm.
I think I go back to the question of like, what's the purpose of assessment? Why do schools assess children? We do so to be able to inform on their progress to ourselves, to them, to their parents, to outside stakeholders. And secondly, it helps us inform the next steps. And, they're the two principal core things of assessment. And slightly controversially, I think like the journey of personalisation is really, really important. But I think assessment is standardisation is the success criteria that I cannot pull myself away from. Why is the IB such a successful global curriculum, particularly the IB diploma? And one of the reasons it remains for many stakeholders and parents and children the gold standard is it is completely standardized. You can judge one child's progress against the other. Whether those measures and that tools of assessment are accurate and reliable and valid is an interesting point to explore further. But if I ask myself, like, do we want to go down? Would we as a school want to go down a role where we assess, we change we personalize our assessment of children, I would say some steps down there, like providing different ways for child to express the understanding of the same things. But I think in reality, a school in our context really needs to have standardized assessment, because that is one of the factors which our school success is built upon. And one of the things I know we haven't really touched on ideas of like equity and equality, but I really feel that the evidence is quite clear, right? The biggest way you provide access to success in an academic context for children who have deficits in terms of socioeconomic status or anything else is providing with standardized curriculum, because the first thing that wealthy, socioeconomically advantaged parents can do is game systems when they're so personalized that they can get access to resources that other children can't. So like I might be completely wrong here. Like I'm really willing to argue my point and be told it's not that case at all, Simon. But I definitely feel like personalization in the journey is the place where we have the most opportunity. But actually the gatekeepers of assessment at the end should try to be as standardized as possible.
Moving on to my, penultimate question, in terms of looking at, are there successful adaptations you've seen in your school environment, and maybe what inspired your team members to do that, to sort of meet diverse student needs? Neil, I'd love to get your thoughts on that question.
Yeah, well, not so much in the current setting that I've got, but in my previous settings that we've had, we tried to integrate nothing different, more in the sense of like integrated project-based learning to an IB framework to support the diverse learners. We've used interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary projects within the, like, say, for example, the IB, so that they can choose themes and connect, as I mentioned before, like to those real world issues. I think it's more getting them away from that knowledge and that and developing the skills and that application to unknown scenarios, that critical thinking, that problem solving. That's what we've tried to do in terms of look at them. So it's more beneficial for those students that don't really excel through your traditional instruction, exam rote type learning, and it just gives them that more variety, that more flexibility in terms of how they can demonstrate their understanding of what they're doing. And I think the project-based part really does help those particular types of students out as well. Another example that happened in previous school that I've worked in, I wasn't part of that because I'm not a language area, but our language department supported like IB pathways with like, they developed like tiered resources, and they adjusted the success criterias and allowed those multilingual learners to access the core standards in different ways to get their understanding across. So that was a couple of ways in which we've kind of adapted it to make it more personalized rather than just going through that traditional approach.
David, your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I'm going back to thinking about Simon's question about standardized assessment. I may come back to that, but I think the way that we're trying to be innovative and trying to adapt to current needs is I've always had this analogy that that curriculum is kind of like eating some chips. I call them French fries, right? That the core curriculum areas are your French fries, and then any softer skills, let's say the IB approaches to learning and learner profiles, are kind of like your condiments, your ketchup that you want to put on to make things a little bit sweeter, a little bit better, right? I think we're kind of flipping that though. Now, the French fry is more of those approaches to learning, and the core areas are competencies, and having a competency focused curriculum. The way that we make it sweeter is an understanding of the curriculum areas, the understanding of the sciences and Ohm's law. The way that we teach the cycles and systems is through the understanding of Ohm's law. Do you see that little switch? And it's kind of getting back to Simon's quote, is like, okay, I definitely agree. I definitely agree that we need standardization of assessments. And I echo what Simon was saying before, is that the IB is extremely successful because they have standardized their assessments. But yet my wondering is, what do we want to standardize? If what we want to standardize is core curriculum areas and content knowledge and to something of those forms, then that's a question. If what we want to standardize is the ability to transfer knowledge to an unfamiliar situation, do we want to standardize communication and collaboration skills? If that's the part that we really want to standardize, I'm more focused in the innovative part of me, and the more future focused part of me really wants to standardize those things. And I do believe that the IB is kind of moving towards that. I think any future focused curriculum is really moving towards that. And I think that is the future needs of our students. How do we make them future ready? It's being adaptable. It's focusing on competencies. It's focusing on the ability to group knowledge and be able to transfer that to unfamiliar situations. So I think that's the way that we're trying to be a little more innovative, is moving towards those types of skills. No.
Nadine, your question.
Yeah, and maybe I'll stay on that thread, but I guess if the goal is kind of future ready skills and where the world's going, we're kind of getting to this place where you have unlimited knowledge in your pocket or on tap with GPT and AI. So you have a PhD, or you will have a PhD in every different subject in your pocket, and you'll be able to get answers to any knowledge base very, very quickly. So do students for the future need a different type of curriculum that's more aligned to what David was saying, putting different contexts together, thinking about how to think of different things, how to string knowledge into different subjects or to your personalized situation? I guess it's more of a meta conversation, but once knowledge becomes on tap and it's unlimited for everybody, and everybody has that PhD in their pocket, what skill set do the future students need going into their careers?
Simon, your thoughts on that last?
Yeah, I guess the pedantic in me is trying to figure out whether children will have unlimited knowledge in their pockets or unlimited information, and what they do with it then comes into knowledge. But I guess that's to the side. Yeah. Excuse me for a divergent thought there. Like I said something earlier. I talked about systematic personalisation as an institution, such as a school, versus individualized personalisation. I think we as a school have really changed what we did in our high school diploma to try and create systemized personalisation so that children have more flexibility in there. We are one of those schools where everybody does the IB diploma almost to start with. We have about 100 children in the IB diploma in each grade level, and about 96 of them do the IB diploma. Everybody gets a high school diploma as well, but there's about 4 to 8 children every year who the IB diploma is not the right thing for them. I've been particularly interested in the work they've done on the Global Impact diploma out of the International School of Bucharest, trying to create a more globalized approach to a set of individual schools, creating systematic personalization. But yeah, what we've really tried to do is create a common high school diploma for all of our students, but provide more flexibility in there for exactly this, for the personalization that young people provide. Because we've had, I guess some schools suffer from this as well, we've kind of had a situation where everybody in our community wants to do the IB diploma because that's what they see as the success criteria, but it's just not the right thing for every child in our community. But it is such a small cohort, somewhere between 5 and 10%, that actually we need to provide for them in a personalized way. And we ended up doing lots of individual personalization. We said, no, that's probably not the right thing to do. We should really try and create systematic personalization. So we've done so by moving to more flexible ways to show progress. So actually, more flexible courses to be able to show progress.
Yeah, and my last question, sort of looking at these digital tools in a bit further depth. I know we've touched on a few of them, but it'd be great to learn more about which digital tools perhaps you found that have been useful, that you found see quite interesting in terms of how teachers are using it, and then maybe what approaches you might like to see in sort of future generations of learning platforms and digital technology in your schools. Neil, I'd love to get your thoughts on that one in terms of the role of these digital platforms.
Yeah, I think like the question, like 2 parts. I think that they play a really like the potential, they play a really pivotal part in helping the schools with what we're talking about tonight in terms of that standardization or personalization. I mean, they allow the teachers to obviously differentiate their content, their pace, that sort of thing, and obviously those structured progression paths. But I think sometimes when you mentioned on there, what are some of the pitfalls, or how does it fall short? I think some of the programs are quite one size fits all, and they lack that flexibility. And they take away that student agency and that creativity. We've used several. I mean, like from IB, Toddle's come up with different platforms. We're working with something at the moment with Craig Kemp called EduSpark. Just looking at different platforms and courses and options and choices. When I was in Abu Dhabi, we worked with a guy called, you're probably familiar with him, David Harkin, 8 Billion Ideas. And he's got like an entrepreneur type approach to his company that comes into schools from primary through to secondary and looks at that entrepreneurial aspect in terms of, and we think that's a really good way to try and get students as we're moving them towards those jobs for the future. His things are like looking at certain case studies and how you can come up with ideas and innovation to change ideas and thought processes within schools. So we found that's a really insightful way of doing it as well. And his platform is very user friendly. They've got lots of scope on it, and it doesn't just limit it. As I mentioned, it allows that flexibility, that creativity for teachers and for students as well, to demonstrate that agency and go through that. So those are a couple of the ones that we're looking at, and we're looking to try and see if we can get some other ideas to pilot some others. But yeah, that's some of the areas that we're focusing in.
David, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, we're looking at Toddle as well, and any of the LMS platforms that we have, the learning management system platforms that we have that we're looking into and researching. It seems like the ones that kind of separate themselves from others are the ones that have the AI integration into it, that allows that data connection into planning, into reporting. It kind of makes that connection really, really easy. Also, as far as the other side, we're looking at other platforms to be able to support data analytics. And again, like I was saying, keeping the data right at the fingertips of the teachers. We're looking into IntelliSchools and how we can kind of do this data lake dump into IntelliSchools, and it'll be a feature where teachers can just interact with it and chat with it, and it'll kind of tell us their data story. But also, we are being very hesitant about it as well. We're being very mindful of, like we were having a chat today about any kind of LMS and any kind of guidelines that we would develop for an LMS. And I think we talked for maybe the 45 minutes to an hour of, there's one aspect that is removing the human connection, and in the development of a new unit or new learning experience, there's less discussion, and we want more. Any type of digital tool that we're using, and most of them seem to have AI built into it, that we don't want teachers to not talk. That we want to make sure that pedagogical discussions and that dialogue is continuing to happen. And so that's why we're being really hesitant on moving forward with any tools. We're not in any rush. I think if anything, I think we're taking a little bit of a slower pace and making sure all of our guidelines and our philosophies and our purpose is really clear before we move forward.
Nadim, your thoughts on that one in terms of the schools that you're working with, perhaps, would be great.
Yeah, overall, what leaders see right now is AI tools as like one bucket. So they're purchasing one AI tool, or they have a strategy around one AI tool. But I think it's going to be more similar to the internet or mobile, where we're going to have really everything rebuilt in an AI type way. So you're going to have the student information system rebuilt, which will be in an AI way, learning management systems, curriculum tools, games, and all of these different kind of segments. So what we're seeing in the market right now is just that they see it as an AI tool, and that's kind of the whole industry or the one type of tool. But I think it's going to get a lot more segmented, and the tools will get a lot better at at each of those things. What we're focusing on at TeachAid again is that curriculum and pedagogy. So there is a lot of other tools out there that do the productivity side, maybe the data side, the learning management side, but we're really focused on that curriculum and pedagogy.
And Simon, your thoughts on that in terms of some of the tools
Yeah,
that
I
you
mean, I can't do much more than echo my colleagues, really. I suspect I'm confident that the future of personalisation lies quite firmly in the use of technologies such as artificial intelligence. And I think it's got huge opportunities for us to do things we currently don't think are imaginable. But I also echo the concerns about speed. I think we're equally, as David said, not in a rush. I think as schools, we are probably prone to get a little bit excited and jump in before we really understand the true implications of the things that we're doing. And I think we also have an obligation to our children to make really well-informed decisions. And perhaps I've come a little bit full circle in my feelings about personalized learning through technology, and that I've been extremely excited about it and moved through to more caution about it, back towards enthusiasm again, with a set of criteria that sit in my mind in terms of, really designing tasks which don't outsource thinking, which really do promote deliberate difficulty for children. I like the idea that Nadeem talks about in terms of, like, I think that's quite an enticing thing for children to be able to understand, like, just how you create a personalized individual pathways for children, and how you record and think about that, and how you design that so that child progresses at the rate which they should be progressing. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like the difficulty is we're sitting right in the middle of a paradigm shift. I think as you are in the middle of most things, it's very difficult to take a step back and see really what's going on. But yeah, I'm super optimistic, but super cautious at the same time.